Tobias Harris, and Tobias drills it! Sixers up one!
Embiid fakes, Embiid down the lane!
What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Pick Swap Podcast. My name is Sean Barnard, and I'm here with James Birrane. The vibes are high in the Sixers world, and I would not want to be breaking down with anyone else. James, how we doing today? How you feeling?
Dude, feeling great. We're 10% into this season, and I feel fantastic. We'll obviously check back in here in a couple of weeks, but still, right now, I feel pretty good.
Yeah. Oh no, it is amazing. I did not think that we would be the lone team at 8-1 in the NBA, first place across the entire NBA, one of 4 teams in the top 10 in offensive and defensive rating. Oh, and by the way, they have the brightest young star across the entire league in Tyrese Maxey. So I do not want to bury the lead. I want to touch on what we witnessed last night, a 50-point performance from Tyrese Maxey. I'll begin with this question for you, James. If I had told you within 10 games of this season, Tyrese Maxey will be dropping a 50-point game at the NBA level with Joel Embiid in the game, what would you say?
I would say, I believe it, man. I do. This guy, honestly, I don't know what else I don't know what ceiling to put on him. You know what I mean? I think it's honestly kind of irresponsible for us to try to put a ceiling on him or try to compare him to anyone, pre and post his career. I think that he is one of a kind right now. And obviously coming off of that game, we're going to be feeling fantastic about him. But over the last 3 seasons, game after game, year after year, every time we've put restraints on him or tried to put him in a box of who he might be, he's crushed those expectations. So 50 points, just another notch, right? Just another thing that he's done that we weren't expecting. And damn, dude, it was fun to watch. He's elite. Yeah, it was my first thought this morning was just damn, dude, we have an elite guard that does everything. And it's a pretty good feeling, man.
Yeah, he's ready. He's here. And just to rattle off the entire stat line for Tyrese Maxey, 50 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, a plus 17, shot 20 of 32 from the field, and 7 of 11 from beyond the three-point arc. Just crazy numbers, like a heat check. He was hitting heat checks, step back threes. The amount of separation he creates on a step back is straight up absurd. The way he just kind of has that little snatch dribble and he's getting 5 feet of space against guys, which is crazy for his size. And I do want to make sure I bring up the blocks because he has so far this season, Tyrese Maxey has 9 blocks so far this year. He had 8 blocks all of last season. And these aren't just fluke blocks. These are timing plays. These are instinct plays. There's a hustle plays that he has to read out, have the instincts and athleticism for, and he's delivering on. So defensively, he's been far and away progressed in a way that I didn't think was possible. And there's so much talk about all the playmaking, all the scoring, and deservingly so because he's leaps and bounds better there as well. But defensively, I didn't even think that side of things was possible, and it's already here.
Yeah, and I think, not to go backwards in all of these conversations, but for him, it just shows the natural ability has been there from the beginning. He has had all of these tools from the start. It was just a matter of time for him to kind of put it all together, and whether that was in terms of his role and how many times it's changed and been moved and switched and he's had to adapt and maneuver and be flexible, which is, to his credit, has been fantastic. He's done a great job in all of those different kind of facets of his career so far. But now he's getting to be fully Tyrese Maxey, fully himself. Keys in the pocket. It's his kind of team to run at this point, which is insane. Obviously, Joel is still Joel, but he has been able to offensively take control of his game. And then defensively, I think Nurse challenges him significantly more than Doc did of, you got to be better here. You got to fight over screens. You got to be more active on this side. And he's taken that challenge and gone head on. So he's been, I don't know if we can say enough good things about him so far, but dude, the Drew Holiday chase down block that he had last week was okay, all right, Tyrese, we get it. that was a legit like chase down block on a dunk,
Yeah.
which you don't
Oh yeah.
see from a guy that's 6'2", 6'3", maybe. His size, what he does, like you don't see that from those guys. So for him to
Yeah.
be doing that on a good wing, like that was Heald that he blocked, right?
Yeah. It was Buddy. Hmm.
He's what, 6'7",
I think he's a little smaller than that, but he's a couple inches bigger than
6'5",
Maxey, no
six
doubt. Yeah, I
six.
think
Like
he's like 6'5". Yeah.
he's a wing, right? Like he's chase down blocking a wing on a dunk attempt. That's
Mhm.
that's insane to even think
And
about.
his hand was like at like the top of the
Yeah,
square for that. Like he was
it
up
was
there for
it was
that.
gross, dude. It was really, really gross, and I can't believe that like that's what he's doing. He's not only putting up 50, but he's also doing that. It's great to see from him.
Yeah, and to touch on, you mentioned Joel there, and we should as well. He ended with 37, 13, and 7 last night. Another 7 assist performance for him. Pretty efficient, 12 of 26 from the field. Got 8 offensive rebounds for Joel last night, which is incredibly impressive. That's higher than he got all of last season, that number right there. So that's another Nick Nurse effect. And I've danced around this take for a couple weeks now, and I'm ready to put it in cement, lock it in stone, put this in whatever. The two-man game between Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey is the most dominant two-man pairing that Joel Embiid has ever had, the most dynamic, the most ways that they can score. And the reason I want to break this down and go through this part by part is James Harden is the obvious answer for what it's been to date. James Harden is incredibly elite at the things that he does, but very limited in the things that he can do. And by the way, I won't go down the rabbit hole, but James Harden in LA right now, he has yet to attempt a shot within 3 feet of the basket so far in a Clippers jersey. That should be the most frightening thing to Clippers fans as far as what his body's doing. But as far as back to the good days of James Harden in Philadelphia, it was either the little pocket pass to Joel, which Harden was one of the best of all time at making that pass, or it was you get the switch, you get a big man on you, and it's isolation ball, and it's either the step back three, or you can kind of, I guess, force your way past him and get to the basket. And never looked that clean from James Harden doing that. Also factor in like the Ben Simmons pairing with that. Guys just went under every single screen. There was never a threat of a jumper, and that's why the pick and rolls with Simmons and Embiid never worked, because there was no threat of scoring. When you add in Tyrese Maxey to this, there were moments last night where every time a guy went under the screen, Maxey just purely shot a three. He also has the floater in this little mid-range game in a way that Harden just straight up doesn't, or at this point in his career doesn't at least. And then finishing around the rim, he's also far and away better than Harden, that he can finish in a variety of ways. The way he's able to kiss it off the glass and get that kind of spin on it, and the way that he can attack a million miles per hour and still get that soft touch is so impressive to me. So, James, do you agree with me that the Maxey and Embiid pairing is the best two-man game we've ever seen with Embiid?
Yeah, I don't think it's honestly, I don't really even think it's close at this point. And I think that we can kind of look back even farther, like peel this back 2 more layers, and you
Jimmy,
think back to the 2-man game of Seth Curry, and even
sure.
before that, JJ Redick, and how much we enjoyed watching those offensively. And those guys, all they did was shoot. All they did was shoot. And that was threat enough to create a lot of open space for Joel. And Joel was big enough and garnered enough attention to then create enough space for them to get shots off. And that's why those were dangerous. But then you factor in how Maxey not only can shoot, not only can get downhill, but he's now growing as a playmaker, and creating a lot of plays for other players, whether that's shooting the ball, whether that's to Joel. That pocket pass has been working for them as well, and he's created a lot of opportunities for Joel in that mid-range space as well. Um, but he's able to do all 3 things. I feel like all of the pairings that Joel has had in the past had a limitation on one of those 3 or 4 levels, right? Like JJ and Seth, they can't really drive. They're not really getting to the rim. Harden's not really even getting to the rim, for being completely honest with you.
Yeah.
And then Simmons really wasn't spacing the floor at all, wasn't bringing guys out to the 3-point line to shoot. He was only trying to get downhill, really only trying to pass. Maxey is able to do all of those things at a really high level. And on
Yeah.
top of that, dude, like he's young, he's spry, and he's like at your neck at every second of the game. Like he puts so much pressure on the defense. And you look at a game like that for Joel, what do you have? 37?
Yep. 37. And who cares?
37 points, and nobody cares. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. And it was like he had 19 in the first quarter. Like
Yeah.
he was quietly dominating that game from the start. And then Maxey took over obviously in the 2 in between quarters. But like, dude, if he can hand the reins to Tyrese and he comes off the court and he can put up 25 points in the second quarter, like, dude, if that's what we're doing right now, we're cooking with gas. And it's a
Yeah.
really nice thing to watch, especially when you put in between there like a bunch of good defensive switchable wings. Whew, it just feels great to watch.
Yeah, it's happening, man. And the
Yeah.
other layer that they're adding to like this two-man game is Joel will get the ball and just like hold it outstretched. And it's either he'll like pop it up to Maxi or just be a straight handoff. And the way
Yep.
that like he just positions himself where it's like a screen and then Maxi's essentially just walking to a spot up three-pointer. That's been automatic as well. And that's another area that would just be impossible with James Harden because he does not move off ball like that. We've seen the relocation threes for Maxi. He's just such a dynamic offensive weapon that is fully being unleashed. And I think last night specifically, the 50-point performance, the way it happened, the way the whole flow of the game, that the Pacers really tried to up the tempo of that game. And Maxi was
Yeah.
essentially the answer for that, that he's a guy who nobody's outrunning this guy. Nobody's getting up and down the court
Yeah.
quicker than this kid. So he kind of was the answer to that. And I think for Joel specifically, it was a little bit of a light bulb moment last night of like, okay, he's here, he's ready. This is my now co-star. This is my guy. And I can take my foot on the gas and defer to him when he has it going, which last night he clearly did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's got to be a nice thing for him. And it's nice to know that they can win in like a variety of ways. Obviously, they've proven that up to this point. But to now look at him but I mean, like if you're looking at, again, we've kind of talked about this and from last year and this year, like from last year's perspective, like we just don't look like we play modern basketball, right? And then coming into this year is like this team plays a little bit faster. They have the wings. They play modern style basketball. They look like they're playing in today's NBA. And now you have a guy like Maxey who's a fantastic guard who scores on all three levels, really quick, great handle. Like he's doing everything that we want from a primetime guard at this point in time, where you just haven't had that in the past. And he's now not only just being a starter level player, he's flourishing. We really don't know what this might turn out to be, all-star, all NBA. Those things are on the table at this point,
Yep.
and that's incredible to
100%.
say. So there's, we don't, this is kind of, again, this is kind of just the first step. Like we're 9 games into the season. We're having this conversation. Obviously, you need to sustain that. But from our perspective, and I think from the league's perspective, this is a sustainable model to winning basketball games. I think it is like the most sustainable model. And I wanted to ask you actually, because I saw this earlier. I feel like the Sixers have always been a disliked team over the last 5, 6 years, right? Like I don't think
Mhm.
Ben and Joel was a very likable duo. I don't think people outside of this organization really, they weren't fun to watch necessarily. James and
Yeah.
Joel, obviously a similar, feeling towards them. They're foul grifters, whatever you want to call them. This is pure basketball right now. Do you think Tyrese and his ascension now makes the Sixers a likable team? Like, you think around the league, I feel like they're just becoming a much more likable team,
Yeah.
for fans and other teams alike.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And part of it, I think, is play style. Is there's much more of the team friendly stuff, guys moving around, guys playing harder, just straight up. And Tyrese Maxey is straight up impossible to dislike. Like
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about this guy. And not to just fully dive in and make this the Tyrese Maxey show, but Saturday he had his turkey drive in Philadelphia that I had a chance to attend and cover from the media side of things there. And first off, the 24 hours that Maxey had there is had a nice cool, I believe it was 29-11 in Detroit, leading them to a win there. Team plane flies back, lands at 2 a.m. He goes home, goes to sleep, is at George Washington Carver High School where this event was by noon the next day, and then still made it to practice at 1 o'clock for the Sixers practice. Family donated 10,000 turkeys that they gave them out to families in need for Thanksgiving. Very awesome event of him doing this, him making the time, him finding a way to fit it in amid all this. And I had a cool conversation with Maxie's mom that I was just kind of trying to give her flowers, just be like for real, this is one of the most beloved guys in the entire city. Like it's amazing that he's putting in the effort to do all this and stuff. And I made a comment that last year when I was on the beat, like doing dealing with players from the media side of things, like Tyrese Maxey truly was one of the nicest guys as far as dealing with media. Because I on several occasions there were moments where the Sixers PR tend to keep kind of things under wrap and they'll be like, all right, we're moving on to the next guy. And Maxey on several times was like, no, hold up. Like, do you have another question? Do you have something you want to ask? And like kept that, which little things like that matter. But anyway, I said that to Maxey's mom that I was just like, he truly is one of the nicest guys as far as dealing with the media and dealing with everyone. And Maxie's mom looks right back at me and just goes, "Well, he better be." And like that kind of like it's cool to see like how he's brought up. And by the way, it was his whole like family running that event, so it's just impossible to straight up dislike this guy. It can't be done. The way he goes about his business on and off the court, and that smile is just infectious, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, not to make it about us, which we always, end up doing, but Sixers fans have been through a lot, and we've had a lot of guys that we wanted to be and like urged and like yearned for them to be a certain way on and off the court. Those guys did or did not work out. You can obviously assume who we're alluding to in certain situations, whether it was physically or not, like those things just didn't work out. And, coming from the 21st pick, COVID year, weird first season to getting benched for whatever reason last year, like everything that he's kind of gone through to now, like fully see him being who he, we always kind of thought he might be able to be and hoped he might be able to be. It's just been an awesome experience for us. And I think like really he might have been the only thing that got people like to buy back in
Yeah.
for him to be as good as he is. And I think people just immediately like it's really hard to watch him play and not be like, well, I want to watch him every night. So it's nice to have that for all of us as well, to like everyone can kind of share that feeling about him because he is so good. And like you said, like everything he does is just infectious. It's like, how could he not be your favorite player if you watch him on a nightly basis?
He came off the bench for 19 games last season, James. 19 games that Doc Rivers benched him for D'Anthony Melton. The guy that just scored 50 points in an NBA game last night was benched for D'Anthony Melton, and Doc Rivers lied to us and told us that it was that it was Tyrese Maxey's idea to come off the bench. That happened last year. I can't
Doc's an
believe this.
asshole.
Yeah, the Doc. I would love. I can't wait till Doc Rivers hops on a call for a Sixers game, because this is just. It looks like they're playing a different sport than they did last year. This is just not the same team. And yes, there's been turnover. Yes, there's no more James Harden. But a lot of this is a credit to Nick Nurse. It absolutely is, just as far as how much different things look on offense and defense. And Maxey, I think, is like the biggest beneficiary of this on both sides of the ball. Defensively, like the way that they swarm, the way that they trap, it makes life so much easier than what Doc Rivers was basically having guys guard one-on-one, which is a lot of basketball. I get that. But like, Nick Nurse deserves so much credit for this. I can't wait to hear Doc Rivers' opinion on this entire team, but it is amazing sitting at 8-1. Do you have any other hard-hitting takeaways for the team as a whole before I shift gears a little bit?
Yeah, I don't want to hear Doc on a call. I can't. I don't want to hear it. He's just gonna lie the whole time. He's just gonna bullshit like the entire time. And we've already seen that. Like he literally just told us like, oh yeah, Maxey asked to be benched, like that kind of thing. So I don't want to hear it from him. He's just gonna make up a bunch of random stories that are just fake. But I mean, right now, man, it's like it is really night and day. It honestly is from what we've seen in the past. And defensively, I think like watching them play defense is like, whew, it feels like you just took like an energy drink. The way that they look
Yeah.
out there, they're flying around, and then these guys are allowed to be aggressive. I don't know if we talked about this before. It's similar to like the Utah Jazz a couple of
Yes.
years
Yeah.
ago with Rudy. Like it's that kind of deal. And then Joel has just been a monster down there and been really, really engaged on that end. You can really tell when he's not. Like there have been times, especially Detroit early on, like
Yeah.
he did not look engaged defensively, and that's kind of where those things kind of fell apart. But when he locks in defensively and on the boards, like rebounding has been huge for him. Like this is the first time in a long time we've seen him like leap upwards, get a rebound, and bring it down. And I know it's something that you've harped on for years is just like he's not a good rebounder for a guy that's 7'3". He's figured it out, and they're moving in the right direction. I think defensively, you go down the line of the last 4 or 5 years of the competitive championship caliber teams, they're all top 3 defensive teams. And
Yeah.
the Sixers are en route to be one of those teams as well. So that's definitely a number one thing. Obviously, Tyrese and Joel can handle the offense as long as they're still always competing defensively. I think they'll always just have a really good chance to win any ball game that they're in.
Yeah. And to follow up on that point, this is a tweet from Paul Hudrick of Liberty Ballers here that kind of hit the nail on the head with it. He said, 2 telling Joel Embiid stats: 2.1 blocks per game, which is the highest since his rookie year; 3.4 offensive rebounds. His career high is 2.8. Those are numbers that demonstrate high activity level on both ends. He's in great shape and playing his ass off. And that's pretty nail on the head that we can
I love
just
it.
see it. Yeah, I love
I
it.
love
And this all starts and ends with Joel Embiid's buy-in, like the assists too. He's averaging 5.7 assists per game, which it would be a career high for him.
What was our
He had
over?
7
What
again.
was our over under?
Oh,
Do you
I'm
remember?
gonna have to run the tape on this one. It was definitely in the fives. I think it was probably 5.5 if I
Okay,
remember off the top of my head.
because
So
I think we
near and
both
above.
took over there.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and it's necessary. Like he has to buy in as
Yeah.
a playmaker. This does not happen without Joel. And even those offensive rebounding numbers, some of that has to do with scheme too. Is that so often when the flow of offense, it was living or dying with that mid range, that 12-footer, which he is very automatic on, but he's not just settling for that as much anymore. There's much more just dynamic play, rolling, being in position under the rim in a way that he just hasn't been in past years, and he's just getting more swings at it, as Nick Nurse kind of likes to use that phrase there. So it really is coming together. And I do want to swing over. Before I do this, I do want to send a quick prayer for Kelly Oubre.
Yeah.
That was kind of scary how that all went down. Very disappointing for Kelly on a human being level and a basketball player, that beyond just playing some of his best basketball of his career, and definitely in a way that translates to winning, it truly felt like he had found his niche and was loving it here in Philadelphia, loving it playing for the Sixers. I'm very happy that it isn't anything worse. That when the way the reports broke, that I saw that late last night, and they were using some scary terms like unstable condition, out indefinitely, or will miss an extended period of times. And it's like, all right, what is this guy dealing with? So broken ribs, not that they're any joke by any mean, but I do think all things considered, that glad this happened, and it sucks that it was a whole hit and run in this situation as a whole. But prayers up for Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like with him, obviously on court, we've seen some of the, really great play from him and fitting in here. It seems like he's a really, really liked guy in that locker room, top to bottom. And he's made a really, really good impression on the city as a whole. So I think it was like you said, it was like crazy getting that notification and everything on Friday night. So yeah, hopefully for a quick recovery from him. It seems like he's hoping. Nurse said yesterday, or last night before the game, like he wants to make it back as quick as possible, but take his time. He'll be back sooner than we think, and I'm sure he'll be hopefully back in full form, but I'm glad he's all good.
Yeah, definitely. And they said they're going to reevaluate him in a week, which will probably have a more concrete idea as far as timeline and specific injuries. Rib injuries, like a broken rib, essentially is just rest. He's just going to have to let it heal, which it sucks. He's going to have to spend time away from the basketball court. But as I mentioned, all things considered, for how scary of a situation that is, just thankful that his life is not in danger and there's not an injury worse than that. But definitely a huge bummer for Kelly as a whole. To switch gears and move into his replacement, Nicholas Batum is quickly becoming one of my favorite players, like across the. I was sent a text to Nick last night where I said that I think Nick Batum might be my third favorite player on the Sixers right now. That I think B-Ball Paul might have been leaped by Nick Batum in my mind. It might go Embiid, Maxey, and Nick Batum as far as how much he's just perfect as like such a high IQ player, such a great connector. How do you feel about Nick Batum?
Yeah, Nico, dude, I love him. I actually, so to kind of go from the beginning, I had I don't want to say an argument, but a small disagreement with somebody at work, because when they made the trade, he was like, I hate Nick Batum. He's the worst. And I was like, you don't know nothing about Nick Batum, man. You don't know anything about this guy. He does all the small things well. He's such a good defender, so smart. Even though he's lost his step athletically, he's always in the right spot. Like I almost put it as like offensively, you remember when like Danny Green just always found himself in the correct spot to catch and shoot. That feels like what Nick Batum is offensively, but he has the passing ability, the ball handling ability, and like the movement shooting that our other shooters have not really had. And then, like I said, defensively, he's big. He's got long arms. He got quick hands. He's smart. He's chased down blocked a couple of times. Like he just knows where to be. And those guys are so valuable, especially for a guy in his role where he's not getting the ball very often. You got to make the most of his opportunities. He had the quick release, like up at his head, catch and shoot, didn't dip at all. I love to see that, dude. Just like little stuff like that just makes me happy. Watching those games, and I'm like pointing out to my roommates, and they don't give a shit. They're like, okay, yeah, man. I'm like, did you see it? Did you see he did the no dip jumper? And they don't care. But I love it, and he's been super fun to watch, and I think that he helps in those moments as well. Like Maxey and Embiid, obviously they can kick it to him, and he'll make the right decision when these guys are getting doubled or the play gets clogged up. He knows the right thing to do, and it's proven in that it's only taken him 2 or 3 games to like get in a full rhythm with this team. It looks like he's been playing with them for years, and that's a really, really tough thing to do, especially at the professional level. So shout out to Nick Batum. I think he's been awesome, and probably like the biggest chip in that trade.
Yeah. I think he's in the starting spot for the long term, that I don't see the Sixers moving out of this role. I think he's perfect. And you kind of touched on it a little bit. I think he's like the best versions of like a lot of fan favorites. When we talk about the PJ Tucker, the Georges Niang, Danny Green, he's like the right combination of all those kind of guys. And defensively, he started the game on Tyrese Halliburton yesterday, and I did think like his size bothered him a little bit, and Batum seemed to take that personally. that's going to be kind of the question. That's still my biggest concern with the Sixers team. And we'll kind of shift gears and talk a little bit about kind of expectations or what this team is still missing, if anything. But Batum might be the guy that's asked to guard number ones right now. It's going to be Batum or Tobias Harris. D'Anthony Melton, actually, we'll touch on him a little bit too, because that's probably the lone dark spot right now. But as far as Batum as a whole, I'm comfortable knowing like he can have as big or as small of a role on a night-to-night basis. Like I do think we're going to have a couple random games where Batum's a 20-point scorer this year. And I still think that there's going to be games where he like doesn't really touch the rock at all, but he still makes his impact. He's always in the right spot. I do love that we got the no dip jumper, the quickest release of it. I think it is the quickest release of anybody in the NBA. And they're like, I remember him hitting one against the Sixers a couple years ago that like I didn't even think he caught the ball. It was like in and out before like anything. But yeah, it's awesome to have that on our side. And it feels like he's buying in a little too. Like he was obviously not thrilled to be traded. I get it. He sounds like he's not even committed to being retired at the end of this year, which I thought was the case. And he shouldn't. Like he has life left in his legs. His body is not. It wouldn't be a retirement by I can't play anymore. It would be by I don't want to, which doesn't happen for a lot of guys. So I hope he sticks around. I'm a big fan of Nick Batum, but let's touch on D'Anthony Melton a little bit. What's your level of concern for D'Anthony Melton at this point in the game?
I just think
he's been bad.
Yeah, he's been tough at times. He had a decent game last night. No, like I felt like he shot the ball a little bit better. He had a little stretch where he made a couple of threes. I think his role is not who he is right now. Like he's not a backup point guard. He should not be handling the ball like really at all, especially in a full court scenario. I like Melton a lot. I think that his defensive skill set is really important. But I do think that he's better suited coming off the bench or just in a smaller role. I think that would probably be like that's the number one thing probably is like either another combo guard, ball handler, someone off the bench that can kind of take some of his minutes and rotate that like 3 or 4 man guard rotation that they, be the next guy up. I don't know who that is. I'm sure we'll maybe bring up some names at some point, but yeah, dude, it's tough. It sucks to see it happen to him because I think at some point last year, like he was really, really good. And I'm sure at some points this year he will be. I think that's kind of the only thing keeping me in on him is that like we've seen the best of D'Anthony Melton. And there's points in time where it felt like the ball was going in every time he shoots it. Now it feels kind of the opposite where it's like, I'm surprised if that thing's going in. But I don't know. I think that he's better suited, not in the role that he's currently in, but he's kind of like patching up some of the small holes that the Sixers currently have in the roster. And that's okay for now, but I do think it's something that should be and probably will be addressed when the time comes.
Yeah, I guess I feel bad for him. I like D'Anthony Melton a lot. He's been very good for this team throughout his tenure. He was excellent last year, especially. I guess this is where I get to is if we want the Sixers team to be a legitimate championship contender, which is obviously the goal, do you believe that D'Anthony Melton is a starting caliber shooting guard on a championship team?
I mean, I guess I to answer that question like straightforward, no. I think the answer is no.
I agree.
I think that there's like layers to that though.
Sure.
It depends on who else is in the starting lineup, but as it stands right now, like no, I don't think that that's what I hope that's not what they want either. I think that like they're either going to upgrade somewhere or like things will change in that specific situation.
Yeah, and there could be a world where like D'Anthony Melton slides to a 6-man role when Kelly Oubre comes back, and we're looking at a lineup of Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Nick Batum, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid, which I like quite a bit. That's some good length, some good athleticism. Big lineup, yeah. I still think that's a little short ball handling. Like I think that's kind of the spot I'm eyeing of where they need to upgrade. I've seen some Alex Caruso buzz flying around, Zach LaVine, obviously a popular name. There's plenty of guys going around, but I think in my mind, the 2 areas of concern I still have with this team when we talk big picture, obviously the vibes are great right now. They're playing terrific, so I'm not in a rush to fix this. But my 2 big picture areas of concern is still defending opposing wings, the Jason Tatums, the Jaylen Browns, the Giannis, those type of players that they are going to have to go through in the playoffs. And I just think that they need an additional like ball handler that can create, like a guy like in a way that D'Anthony Melton just can't. I know he had 6 assists last night. He's been pretty good by his standards, by the playmaking standpoint, but it's clearly not natural for him. And he still has like the moments where it feels like he just forgets how to play basketball for a second, which I don't really enjoy seeing out of him. But would you agree with that assessment as far as areas of concern?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is like maybe the area that they're gonna have to address at some point. Again, I think that they're in such a good spot that they're playing really well. They've proven that against some good teams as well that they can, they're not just beating up on some bad teams. They've gone out there like Indiana's been like I think Indiana's quietly very good this year.
For sure.
And obviously they beat Boston and they've played some good teams. They've also beat up on some bad teams as well. But they have this period now where it's like not only are we not going to make a move, we really can't, right? Like they can't really do anything until like January. So we have this period of time, this next 6 to 8 weeks, where they can really firmly, honestly evaluate the roster, how they look, how they're playing, and come to a decision of like, hey, this is where we're going to go from here. We're either going to go all in and make this trade, or we're going to make this small like ancillary piece trade. And it's nice to have this period, but I do think that I know this is kind of a question that we touched on earlier, like Tyrese being as good as he's been, not only like eases that process, it makes it like your target list like way smaller. It
Yeah.
narrows that list, which makes things a lot easier. And I think that that'll help them in the long term as well. So I definitely agree with you there.
So if they go into the playoffs without making a significant move, which I do think is on the table, I would not completely shock me if Daryl Morey wants to keep this cap space plan to look for a bigger fish in the offseason. And really, if this team is playing as well as they have to start the season, I kind of get it. What do you think the outlook is if they go into the playoffs right now as the team's currently constructed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're good enough to compete with anybody. Like I don't really see why not at this point. Especially once you get Oubre back. I don't think like on paper you don't have enough star power, right? Like you just don't, and that's what like really comes into play in the playoffs. But in my head, like, and again, this might be like a logical fallacy, but I look at the Denver Nuggets. Like, who's the third star on that team?
Michael Porter Jr.
Sure, is he a star though? Like, is he like he's
He's
obviously
good.
like he's very good, and he does things well, and not to take away from him at all, but like they don't have another like quote unquote star. Like they have last year when they won the championship, they had a hyper scoring guard, and Nikola Jokic, who obviously does things differently from Joel, and they're different, but their blueprint is there, right? Like a
Yeah,
lot of good switchable, kind of all around wings and guards, a really really good offensive guard, and then your center, who's kind of the hub of everything. And you kind of are following that mold right now. I think that Tyrese
for
Maxey
sure.
and Jamal Murray are, I don't know where you want to put them, but compare them. I think
Pretty
they
close.
operate
Yeah.
in similar areas as well. So I think that they're like you can follow that mold. I think you have to upgrade a bit, like a guy like Michael Porter Jr. in that realm. You know what I mean? But I don't think that they need to go like break the bank for a quote unquote star when you could just add some pieces. So I think if you go into the playoffs as constructed right now, like I don't know if they win the championship, but they're gonna compete, and
Yeah.
none of those series are gonna be easy. I think Nick Nurse is, also a really really big ticket to have in your back pocket in a playoff series because he knows how to win a championship. He did it. So that's also another thing that they have in their corner as well.
Yeah, and I don't think they win a championship without making an additional move. To your point about the Nuggets, like I think Denver is very much onto it, and I think the rest of the NBA has caught up of the way to win is not assembling the amount of star power. And I think this is a lesson that Daryl Morey just recently learned, and I hope that
Yeah,
it sticks with him. This is a lesson that the Clippers are currently learning, that plenty of other teams have found out does not quite work. The only time it works, it takes a special group of stars for guys to properly buy in, like a guy like Chris Bosh, who was content with being essentially a spot up shooter after being an all-star for years. Kevin Love, similar situation where he was bought into just doing that role. That is not everybody. That is not James Harden. But to speak on roster construction as a whole, that is the secret, is you have these quote unquote stars, the one or two guys, and then you find guys to fill in the gaps. I think your Michael Porter Jr. is a little better than you're giving him credit. He's just a hyper
maybe.
efficient shooter. But I understand your point. I think Aaron Gordon's the guy I don't think gets enough credit on that Denver team for doing the little things and picking up for Jokic's slack defensively, being a guy that is a lob threat on the offensive end, who's some easy offense, just a safety valve for them. I do think the Sixers might be missing their Aaron Gordon. And for me, that's OG Anunoby. That is the guy that I have my sights set on. I don't think it is this massive star, and OG's still a pretty big name. I'm trending more towards like a guy like that than I am a Zach LaVine at this point in time. But kind of curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, I do think the only problem with OG, I like him. I think, dude, I think if he's ever a Sixer, people are going to like reevaluate what defense means, like what this defense is going to look like, dude. If he's guarding their best wing and Joel is roaming the rim, it's going to be like hell on earth trying to score on the Sixers, and that's awesome. Um, I do think that would be an offseason thing. Like I think the way that I look at it is the most likely outcome for this season is they make a trade for Malcolm Brogdon or Alex Caruso or somebody of that sort that can come in and like plug a pretty big hole and like make this team take them up a little bit of a notch. And then they go get a guy like OG in the offseason to sign here.
Yeah,
I do worry that one, his price is going to be a little bit too high. Two, the Raptors are just too stubborn to trade him.
stupid. Yeah,
Stupid, stubborn,
yeah,
stupid, whatever you want to say. Can I be on record? I don't know if people are talking about this. I've heard it before. Like Pascal Siakam can stay in the other country. Like I don't want him anywhere near this team. He's not the answer. Um, but when you're looking at it, I think you also like your picks start to really, really add up come the draft, right? Like you go from 3 to like
mhm.
5 post draft. So you can I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, outcomes that you can go from here. But in my mind, I think you make that smaller trade during the season before the deadline, and then off season, you can either make another trade because you'll have more picks to trade, and you have all that cap space to make sure that you take care of those. Obviously take care of Tyrese, but bring in another player that fits a role that you're really looking for, and they have the opportunity to do that. So I think that they can upgrade this year and go into the off season with a lot of flexibility as well.
Yeah, it's definitely blank check for Tyrese Maxey, and then you're looking for that third piece to marry him and Joel Embiid, find the final piece to complete that. That's for sure the outlook there. I do agree with you about Pascal Siakam. I've never been a Siakam guy. I've on many occasions called him Tobias Harris with a permanent green light, and he just doesn't pass the eye test for me. Like every basket he scores looks so difficult, and I know he puts up some absurd numbers, and I've seen him have some really good games for sure, but it just like I just don't quite buy it. It just to me does not stand up. And I think like I'm very curious what his outlook for here. I definitely don't think he's a 1. I don't even really think he's a 2. I'm curious what his outlook is for here. And for Toronto as a whole, they got no clue what they're doing, man. Both Siakam and OG are going to be free agents this year. OG has a player option. Scotty Barnes is very clearly like their building block, but they took this like versatile positionless basketball like too far to the point where they don't have any guys that can like score or shoot, which is
Yeah,
a pretty important part of basketball. And they lost Fred VanVleet this offseason. They
for
lost guys
free.
that yeah, for free. Another guy that just walked in free agency, which is like the number one what you should not be doing as a franchise is letting talented players walk and leave for nothing, which is what it seems like they're kind of planning to do with both OJ and Pascal. So I don't really understand what they're doing up there completely. Scotty Barnes has looked very good this year. I'll give him credit. I understand him as like a building block, but I think his ceiling's below a 1A star too. I think he's best served as kind of a connector and closer to an Aaron Gordon model than he is like a Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey for sure. But who knows? I do get it up there. But the point that I guess I'll circle back to is it is nice from the Sixers perspective to be sitting right here. The vibes are high within the team. The assets are in the closet in a way they have not been for several years. And you do have a chance to kind of sit back, not rush things, evaluate. So I guess the grass is probably the greenest it's been in Philadelphia in the Daryl Morey era and beyond.
Yeah. And I think it's not just like it is obviously the way that they're playing. It's Tyrese being 23 and like having this whole career in front of him that he's been the first one that has not only like we've put the trust in him and he's given back. You know what I mean? Like the other
Yeah.
stars that we've put in that trust in, obviously Joel, but he was so much more of a question mark coming into the league. Like he missed his first 2 seasons. So
Yeah.
like he's the first guy to come in, show promise, deliver on that promise, and then some, and then some, and then some. So that's exciting. You have Joel who looks refreshed and he looks great. You have this team full of wings that we've never had before. And on top of that, you have so much flexibility in terms of your cap space and you have assets to go get a star. Like all the things have kind of like, it's been a whirlwind to get to this point. I actually can't really even believe that we're here from if
Yeah.
you probably go back to like September podcast or August podcast, you're like, this sounds horrible. This is going to be a terrible year. We might be punting this year and not even competing at all to now fast forward to here. And it's like, holy shit, Tyrese might be all NBA and Joel's defensive player of the year. And We got 4 or 5 different wings that can come in and guard and shoot and dribble. It's like, whoa, how did we get to this point? So a lot of reason to be excited. And obviously I feel like we got excited pretty early, but people didn't buy in naturally.
Yeah.
But at this point, I feel like it's hard not to watch this team and be like, dude, I'm ready to watch this team play for the long haul. And I think that they are, maybe a little bit short of what could be a championship roster. But in terms of their attitude and the way they've been playing, I don't want to put a cap on them. So I'm ready for this kind of just to play out, and hopefully they make an adjustment here or there, and they might be in a really good spot come the end of the season.
Yeah, and side note, Daryl Morey also bit off and tossed a grenade into Los Angeles, who happen to have two of the possible premier free agents on the market in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard next offseason as we talk about this cap space plan. So James Harden could be the gift that keeps on giving to Philadelphia
Yep.
if we want to look at it from positive aspect there. But any official changes for season prediction? Do you think this team can go 81-1?
Yeah, I think so. I think they will. I think they will. Now we'll see. I do want to say, I like the in-season tournament. I think it's fun.
Okay.
I think it's good.
Nice.
I think the courts are bad. Mostly. I haven't seen all of
Yeah.
them yet, but I think from what I've experienced so far, I think those are bad. But I think in-season tournament, good. I think it's fun. I think it's good for the players. I think it's good for the league. I wish everything got explained a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah.
But I think as it goes, we'll get a little bit more comfortable with that. They do too much with the courts and the logos, and they do too much with the jerseys. But everything aside from that, I think I'm in on the in-season tournament. I think I'm a fan of it. I'm a supporter of it. And I just wanted to say that because I feel like it's kind of controversial at this point.
Yeah, no, and I'm mostly on your side there. That I do agree. I do think some of the tournaments, I mean, some of the courts just straight up suck. But I think the coolest moments are like still coming. I think once we get past the group stage, we start to get into like the elimination side of things.
Yeah,
That's
that'll
when
be
it's going to
fun.
be some fun basketball. So as much as it is a little confusing right now, everyone's still figuring it out. I think once we get past this group stage and we start to get into the bracket and the elimination games and guys moving on, I do think people are going to like it, and it's going to kind of up the intensity a little bit in the way that the NBA, that's their goal of it. So yeah, shout out to the NBA for at least trying. And I do agree with you that I approached it with an open mind, and I'm kind of liking the in-season tournament as well.
Yeah, and I think it again, it'll grow like next 5 years. Like I think it'll be a really good thing, and everyone wants players and teams to care about November basketball. This is the way to
Right.
do it. This is the way to do it. And it might be minuscule to some people, like, oh, $500,000 doesn't matter. It matters, especially to some of these young guys that don't have big contracts. Like that's a lot of money, man. That's a
Yeah, I'll
ton of
take
money.
it. I'll take it,
I'll
man.
take it
Yeah.
if they don't want it. I also
Yeah.
love that Joel shot the shot at the end of the game against the Pistons, and they all got pissed at him. But he was like, "No, it counts. Point differential matters." And
And he's right.
he's
And
right. But
I thought he got it off too.
I thought he did
I
too. And
it's
it
so
was
close.
my friend texted me. Is like that was the
That
over.
was the
That was
spread.
the
Yeah.
over.
And the spread, the Sixers were -9 on that. That they ended up losing by 8 before that, or winning by 8 before that
Yeah,
shot. So yeah, that was a shot that mattered for quite a few people out
a lot
there.
of people. That's hilarious. But I'm glad he did it. And I'm glad he justified it by saying point differential matters in this tournament. That was great.
Yeah, absolutely. So who knows? Maybe we're planning a parade for the in-season tournament here in
I'm
Philadelphia.
there.
Why not? Why not?
I'm there.
Yeah. We will be there. But James, appreciate you for joining me on this one. I'm happy the vibes are high, that the spirits are great in Philadelphia right now. Appreciate all you guys for tuning into this episode. Don't forget to drop a comment, drop a like, hit that subscribe button. We'll be back with you for the length of the season. And make sure you guys are tuning into the post-game shows. I've been doing them after every game. They've been awesome vibes in those as well, high spirits after every one. So stay posted for that, and feel free to pop on whenever right after a Sixers game, because you'll know where to find us. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.